Hello, everyone. Jason here for the Wednesday Instagram Live Tablas Creek broadcast. Hope you're all doing well. My guest this week is going to be Sarah Knowles from the Wine Society in the UK, and I cannot wait for you all to meet her. She is great. But while we wait for people to join, as I normally do, I want to share a few pictures of what's going on at the winery. So it is the kind of getting towards the end of the peak of harvest. So I'm going to show mostly pictures of what's going on in the cellar because that's where most of the work is happening. First, the crush pad. This is a batch of Mourvedre grapes that showed up today, and that's largely what we're picking at this point. Mourvedre Roussanne. We have Roussanne in the press from this morning also. It's looking good. We've also are doing a lot of work with just kind of keeping all of the fermentations going. So this is Craig Ham, our assistant winemaker, who is draining a tank of Grenache in this case, getting ready to barrel it down. We've also are doing a lot of punch downs, and we had a guest helper in the cellar today. It's my younger son Sebastian working on a punch down. So the cellar is working hard. It's full. But you can see if you look at our harvest chalkboard that we are probably, this is at the end of last week, we were probably 80% done. At this point, we're probably closer to 90% done. It was hard when I went under the vineyard to find blocks that still had fruit on them. At this point, we're basically reduced to Mourvedre. This is a head train dry farm Mourvedre block in the middle of the property. And we have a little bit of Roussanne. So here's I think a really pretty Roussanne cluster. That's about it. We may be done by the end of the week. If we're not, we're going to be close. More and more, what the vineyard looks like is kind of what you see here, which is a Mourvedre block that we picked earlier this week. We're starting to get some fall colors in the vines. It's been kind of cool at night. We dropped down to the 30s a couple of times. We're supposed to get our first chance of a little bit of rain this weekend. Not a lot, but it's coming. Let me see. I don't have anything else that I want to show you. Oh, one more cool thing. We have the flock back out in the vineyard. This is a picture I took at the beginning of the week in our Scruffy Hill block. We're releasing the sheep into the vineyard. They eat the second crop cluster so they don't rot, start dropping manure that starts seeding the soil with a lot of the microorganisms that live in the summer in their guts, so that they can get activated when the rain comes. So that's where we are. I'm going to stop sharing. The harvest looks very high quality and scarce in quantity. I'll put together a blog later this week with the details, but I'm guessing we're going to end up down by about a quarter. Which is significant but not catastrophic. It's not as low as we were, say, in 2015 or 2011, but it's going to be down. There's going to be wines we won't make this year for sure. Okay, with that as the quick intro, I am going to invite Sarah to join me. She is sending the. I can't wait for you to meet her. This is going to be fun. Oh, hello, Sarah.
Hello. Gosh, I need to reposition further away.
Yes, everything. It's interesting. I find that when I ever do Instagram Lives, I try to set it up by looking at my camera and then just flipping the camera around. And then when I actually do the Instagram Live, all of a sudden I'm like twice as big as I was expecting. And that's...
For real. I was suddenly a forehead. Hey-ho.
Excellent.
It's lovely to see you.
It's good to see you too. Thank you for joining me. I know it's the evening your time, so thanks. Thanks for taking a little bit of time out of your evening.
Oh, pleasure.
So I always like to start by asking people to share their path into wine. Did you know wine was something that you were interested in as you were growing up? Was it on your table with your family? Was it something you came to later? And if so, how?
Yeah, so I guess it's definitely something I came to later. I initially, my family drank wine. There was sort of wine on Sundays and things like that. Although my grandparents on both sides were actually teetotal, so they were dry. And they were dry and Methodist, and so definitely didn't touch it. And I had to have a very awkward conversation at one point when I admitted to my 90-something-year-old grandfather that I was going into the wine trade, about whether or not that was an okay career. But luckily, he'd mellowed a lot in his old age, and I was had him wrapped around my little finger, so I got the seal of approval. But no, I got into wine almost by chance in my last year at university. So I was studying, I was reading geography, and enjoyed travel, and had always enjoyed taste. So I'd always enjoyed food and that sort of stuff. But I'd never really learned anything about wine, and I'd spent 2 years playing quite a lot of hockey and being very field hockey and being very busy with that. And I thought in my third year I needed to stop playing sports and try and focus on my studies. And I'd take up this just little hobby on the side, so I had something else doing, and I'd take up wine. And so I joined a wine club, and I really enjoyed just, I think, having that door open. So the innate privilege of being able to taste fantastic wines was something that I'd never even thought I was going to be able to do. So I was really excited to try those. And then I sat next to a fantastic student who was studying medicine from Glasgow. And she told me that she ran this great club called the Blind Tasting Club, and that I should join that. So I joined that as well. And I started going once a week. And then we sort of upped the number of training sessions to learn blind tasting for a competition that we did against another British university, which was all sponsored amazingly by Paul Roget. So by the end of my third year, I hadn't necessarily focused as much on my studies, but I'd learned an awful lot about wine. I was completely hooked on blind tasting, and I ended up playing in this match, and I did reasonably well. We won as a team, so we went to France to play the French at blind tasting. A French university who'd been competing, and it was all hosted by Paul. It was an incredible experience. I ended up getting top taster, and James Simpson, who's a master of wine in the UK and looks after the Paul Roget account here, on the way home said sort of, "What are you doing next year?" And I hadn't got plans. I hadn't the foggiest. And he explained that something like the wine trade existed. And until then, I hadn't considered it. So no, I was completely smitten. So I then spent that summer applying for harvest jobs. And went and picked grapes in Bordeaux, and Chateau d'Isson were incredibly kind and let me stay there and get lots of hands-on experience picking grapes and standing around at sorting tables and poking ferments and whatever else I was, not going to mess up immediately. So I was given a hose generally to stand in the corner and clean things. I understand that winemaking is a lot of cleaning. From my experience.
Yeah, that was exactly the way that I got started when the first harvest that I was working at Beaucastel. It was basically like, you can't possibly screw things up by washing them. Exactly. Here's the hose. Here's where you point it. Yeah,
pointed away from the winery. But no, it was a wonderful experience, and from that moment I learned two things. I knew that I wasn't cut out to be a winemaker. You have far too hard a job. It's incredibly intense at harvest, and making those huge decisions then, the kind of critical decisions that you have to make exactly at this point of time, felt like far too much immediate pressure to get something incredibly wrong for an entire year. So harvest wasn't for me, but wine was definitely for me. I'd also been lucky enough while I was staying there to meet lots of UK agents who were coming out to visit harvest and to do trips. And because I was sort of this oddity British woman living in the chateau, I was encouraged and welcomed to come and have dinner with these people and chat and understand a little bit more about actually the wine trade in the UK. So when I came back, I started working in a retail shop and sort of found my little network in. But no, it was by chance. Had I not joined the wine tasting club in that third year, I would not be in the wine trade.
It's interesting. I'm not sure that there is anything equivalent to that in American universities. I mean, there are certainly like wine appreciation clubs, but in terms of like competition, I've never heard of that happening here.
Yeah. There aren't too many in the UK. So when I was doing it, I think there were 4 universities, each with a rivalry, two in Scotland, two in the south of England, and both were sort of competing and really taking it very seriously. Because we were doing sort of 12 wines blind, 6 white, 6 red. We had a 20-point scoring system. You know, Jancis Robinson was one of the judges. It was an incredible sort of experience. We took it very seriously. We had a wonderful tutor at the university who also engaged with us and taught us a huge amount about blind tasting, called Hanneke Wilson, who otherwise has a full-time tutoring job, teaching job, and is a professor. And we had all of her experience, and it was incredibly, looking back on it, it was very surreal, but I think that made it all the more fun. And actually, there weren't many of us in the club, so there were only sort of nine of us, 10 of us sort of coming each week on a regular basis. There were more in the wine circle, which was the larger club. But in the blind tasting, it was quite a small group, and only 6 of us competed. And I think 5 of us are still very much in touch. In fact, I saw 4 of them at the weekend and had a lunch with them, and we host each other still, and we still taste wine, and all of them have gone and got proper jobs. I'm the only one who was clearly very clueless at the end of my degree and decided that I better take the chance that I had.
I don't know. I don't know that you can classify what you do as not a proper job on a number of different levels. So I do want to talk for sure about the Wine Society, because I think it is such a cool concept that, again, doesn't really have an equivalent here in the States. But before that, can you talk a little bit about your pursuit of the Master of Wine and what you studied to do that? And it seems like that blind tasting training that you did at university must have been an incredible kind of first step on that path.
It was completely ideal. So I think it was all the training you need to take tasting extremely seriously in a very kind of geeky, quiet, dull, quiet room with plenty of bright lights, 12 glasses, an hour of focused silence and tasting, followed by discussion about whether your, Gruner answer was a stupid answer for what turned out to be Chablis or something terribly, classic that you had missed, and all these sorts of things. And we would spend hours at it. So no, it was the perfect start. So I think I'd also, because I joined the wine trade, at 21, straight out of university, I'd also just done exams after exams every year. And I assumed that when I discovered that the WSET existed, I knew that I had to just sign up, because I didn't think these were really optional. I thought, there's a set of exams in the wine trade. This is what I sign up to next. This is where I go. And so I did all of the WSETs, and really enjoyed the focus learning there, and the approach to tasting, and the sort of categorization of everything into quite a bite-sized chunks and into logical order. And of course, I was lacking a lot of basic wine knowledge. So I didn't know that which grapes grew in the Rhone, or that Sauvignon Blanc was also grown in the Loire, or that. Right. So I didn't have that sort of basic knowledge, and I didn't have knowledge of sort of traditional fine wine either. So I didn't know like which chateau or which producers were special or posh or impressive. So I learned quite a lot of that in those early years quite quickly through the WSET and through starting in the wine trade. And then when I finished the WSET diploma, I don't think I realized I had a choice. I just signed immediately up for the Master of Wine, because dutifully that was the next thing in the list, and I thought it would be a great opportunity to keep going. But I'm so glad I did, and thankful I did, because I think it's an incredibly large undertaking. I didn't know that at the time, and I'm not sure I'd have taken it on had I known fully. But I took it on at a point where I didn't have a huge amount of other things, not a lot of responsibility. I had a very challenging job that was exciting in lots of ways and taking up a lot of my time. But, I didn't have children and a husband and various other bits and bobs going on in my life, or a cat, or, So I was able to devote my life to the MW study, which was then a real joy, because I kind of made it into a lot of my social life. It sounds very sad when I re-say it, but again, I met some of my closest friends now through the study of the Master of Wine, and we met twice a week in London in various different forms and groups, and we tasted every week pretty much for 2 years. And at least with my first year group. And then in my second year, I developed another couple of groups with other students that were in a broader section. And we all tasted, and we went on weekends away. I went on 2 or 3 trips into France and around to kind of see winemaking happen improper and get the real life examples. And I was completely gathered up in it.
Yeah.
And I was lucky in my experience of the Master of Wines because I ended up doing the exams reasonably quickly, which really helped with the kind of momentum of it. So I think I sort of struck lucky in having never really forgotten what I'd tried to start learning, and I was still tasting constantly. So it was a good route in, and yeah, something that I'm very glad I've done, and now love being involved with the Institute of Master of Wines on the other side.
I don't think people realize maybe just how rigorous that program is, or how few people make it through. There's like the number of Masters of Wine in the world is in the few hundreds. Like, I mean, we're not talking even 1,000, right?
No, I think we've just gone through 400, which is wonderful. I think there is a desire that the Master of Wines shouldn't be that best kept secret, and that we should try and expand our membership and encourage people in the wine trade to apply and to have a go at it. But it is a difficult set of exams, undoubtedly. It's tricky.
And I think probably the Master Sommelier program is more familiar to most Americans because it's based here, and it's been in the news for not necessarily good reasons, but it's been in the news a lot recently.
It has.
But one of the things that I've always found really interesting about the way that the Master of Wine program distinguishes itself from what they do for the Master Sommelier program is that there's basically a dissertation that you have to write, right? I mean, there's a big research and writing project that's an integral part of it.
Yeah, so the last stage, so the sort of 3 stages are to pass a blind tasting and theory tasting or theory practice paper in first year. Then in second year, there are, let me get this right. There are 3 blind tasting papers, 1 on whites, 1 on reds, 1 on everything else, or sorted sparklings, fortified sweets. Although the examiners seem to throw in a couple of reds every so often just to jinx you in the middle and that kind of stuff. And then make sure you're concentrating. And then the theory papers, when I sat it, there were 4 theory papers, and there are now 5 theory papers that cover viticulture, vinification, and now the extra paper is on quality control and assurance and bottling and that side of things.
Okay.
As bulk shipping becomes more relevant globally. And then the last 2 papers are on the business of wine, and then sort of general interest topics within wine, so perhaps things like health or CSR or those sorts of things. And all of them are written essay-based papers.
Yeah.
So they so that all differs a little bit from the Master Somm, which I believe is mostly vocal. Whereas this is all very old school, sitting in a dark room in silence for 3 hours, writing 3 essays and tasting in the morning. After you pass those exams, which you can have a few attempts at, but a limited number, you then have to write a dissertation, which is a research paper, which is 10,000 word piece of original research. And that's the key. It has to be original research, but it now is a much broader style that it can be. So it doesn't have to be a sort of quantitative sort of piece of work. It can be more historical, or it can be just slightly more broad in its definition. So you can really pick a topic that you are interested in.
And what was yours? What was your topic?
Gosh, I knew I'd set myself up for a bad one then. So I am interested in it, but I said earlier, I sort of managed to use momentum to get myself through the exams. And then I hit a bit of a brick wall with the research project. I kept putting forward proposed titles and having quite a lot of difficulty getting those titles agreed. Huh. And I'm sure in retrospect that was the right thing, but at the time it felt quite frustrating. But I eventually had a title agreed to look at the impact of reviews on the sales of wine in the UK within the Wine Society, so within online retail. And I was trying to compare a members review. For us, we don't have customers, we have members. So a customer review, and then seeing how it compared against a press review. So against somebody who is outwardly seen to be an expert. And in this case, I had genuine experts, had Oz Clarke and Jancis Robinson, who'd written a review on various wines sold within the Wine Society. I then chose equivalent reviews from members on the same wines. And then I sold it to, or I presented it in 3 different emails, one with nothing at all and just descriptions of the wines themselves, one with the press reviews and one with the member reviews. And I was able to just quite simply see whether they had an impact on the sales. And I did that at a number of different price points and then had a look at what I found.
Was there anything particularly surprising to you in those results?
Yes, I think so. I think some of the background research I'd done, looking at other things that rely on reviews quite a lot, they tend to be expensive purchases. So it tends to be things like cars or holidays or travel, so I was expecting the more expensive wines to have the most impact of the review, when actually I think conversely, our membership or our customer base knew those wines. And so they were confident by and large with or without a review. Whereas actually, if you find a fantastic under £10 or under $15 wine that somebody has said a really great thing about, you're much more likely to immediately see a sort of response. So we saw a higher impact at a lower price point, and we did see that reviews made a difference. So undoubtedly both sets, both from members and experts, but the expert marginally pipped it.
That's fascinating. And it does jibe with what we see here. I mean, the impact of getting a really good score for us, say, on the Patalenda tablets that we sell for roughly $25, like that's much bigger than the impact. And even if that's, let's say, a 92 or a 93 from one of the big publications here, that's a bigger impact than getting a 96 on the Esprit Red or the Esprit White. I think because sort of that opinion is already baked in to to people's thoughts about the wine, and so it's interesting and
no, it is
fun.
And I wonder whether the research on other product categories is as correct as I sort of looked at the time. You know, this is now 8 years ago, so it's a little old, but at the time it definitely suggested that people wanted more review and help when making expensive purchasing decisions. I wonder if wine, without being too negative about our industry, but I wonder if all wine is seen as an expense or a luxury, because it all is. You know, you could live without wine, although we may choose not to. But perhaps all of it is a luxury. So it might have that sort of need very early on, I wonder. But yeah.
Huh, cool. So we sort of brushed against it, but can you tell people what the Wine Society is and does?
Yeah, so the Wine Society is, in very simple terms, it's an online retailer in the UK. We're one of the oldest, so we were set up in the 1870s, but we were set up in a particularly interesting way that created us to be a cooperative. So we are officially owned by our membership, and to buy from us, you have to join the cooperative, so you have to become a member. And that entails buying a share, and the share is then valid for your life, and it's actually a hereditary share, so you can pass it on to friends and family after you pass away, hopefully with a few bottles remaining in your cellar for them as well, if you were very jolly, but hopefully just a few. And it's amazing how, because of that mechanism, it means that we can do business very differently. So because we're a cooperative owned by our membership, maximizing turnover or maximizing growth is not necessarily our biggest factor in life.
No, you're not trying to squeeze every last pound out of your customers.
No, our biggest thing is customer satisfaction and creating a range of wines that is incredibly diverse and broad, that should enable really wine-engaged consumers to find interesting things at very fair prices. And so we also don't have a policy of very high discounts. We don't run sort of big promotional discount policy offers at any point in time. We sort of have a few things for some of the brands, but it's a very small part of our sale. We work on an everyday low price. We're very transparent. To our membership, we have an annual general meeting every year where they can view our accounts and see how transparent we are and see exactly what it is we're doing. Our members, because of that, are much more engaged. We find that we have an amazing relationship with some of our customers who tell us what they're thinking and talk to us in a different way, I think, because they know that they're part of our club, they're part of our society. Interestingly, the sort of caveat is that I think it's often seen that this might be quite expensive, but it's just a £40 share cost, and it's a once only, and there's then no commitment to continue buying. So you don't have to sign up to a subscription scheme, or we're not going to send you wine and charge your credit card later. And it's a very one-off, fairly small transaction initially to become a member.
And how many members do you have? Or is that secret?
We have about 170,000 members now in the UK.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And you are, I met you initially because one of your areas of responsibility is for choosing which wines from California to bring in and to offer out to your membership. But that's not all that you do, right? You have other regions that you're also in charge of.
Yeah, so at the moment I look after North America and then Champagne, all the wines from Italy, and I also look after the spirit category for the Wine Society, which is reasonably small, but adds a little bit of difference.
Cool. And so are there, I mean, particularly, let's look just at North America, but in North America, are there wines that you feel like either wines or categories that you feel like are worthy of people really paying more attention to in your tastings across the ranges of regions and varieties?
Yeah, I think I'm a crazy advocate of Californian wine, and I'm a big advocate of North American wine. So I have consistently sort of beaten that drum here and love the wines I ship and work with. And I think what I try and convince the UK market is that there is this huge breadth of variety and choice. Yeah. And I think we can often, through no fault of anyone's, but I think consumers here can often pigeonhole America or California in particular styles or particular price points or particular brands and associations. And actually, I think that it's so much broader than that. And the number of producers that we're able to work with that are making something completely esoteric and terroir specific is what is really exciting. I think there's also a value sweet spot at the moment that is working in the favor for California or for North America, because I would include Oregon and Washington in this for sure, which is that kind of perhaps accessible fine wine price point. So it's not, so in the UK, I know the price point's very different in the US. So in the UK, we're quite inexpensive, and the everyday price of a bottle of wine is average is about £5, so under $10, well under $10. And so getting people to spend double that is quite a big leap in its own right. But from 10 to say £50 in the UK, you can buy some incredible Californian wines. Or North American wines, Pinot, Chardonnays, all of pretty much the range we stock from you. I have a bottle open. We can also have just a lot of interesting new winemakers, but also some more traditional winemakers or wineries that people will know and recognize. I think that's where the interest really starts to come. And I'm enjoying trying to guide members and my customers through different subregions of America. And that's where it starts to get interesting, to kind of pair styles of wine and grape varieties to different subregions.
We don't make it easy here. I mean, because there is, it's not like Europe, where in general, if you know the region, you know the varietals because they're historical or they're mandated by appellation law. California doesn't help you at all. So there are regions that are associated with particular grapes. Obviously, people think Napa, they probably think Cabernet, or they think Carneros, they probably think Chardonnay, or I mean, there's some things, but it's not at all a given. And we know that from Paso Robles, where there's like 300 grape varieties that are in the ground here, and we grow probably 20 of those ourselves.
Well, I think even just seeing your images earlier of the Mourvedre left on the vine, I put up a photo of your Mourvedre earlier today as well, and I was delighted that that happens to be the last thing you're sort of harvesting. But I'm sure that that's still a bit of a discovery for a lot of our members to know that Mourvedre is grown in Paso, and that this is something that has a very easy home where you are. It suits what you're doing incredibly well. It suits the climate in the terroir. So it's definitely an interesting sort of discovery that we're still consistently going through with new customers.
Honestly, it's a discovery that we're still going through here as winemakers. I mean, we got the first ever harvest of Muscardin outside of France just like 2.5 weeks ago. We harvested 400 pounds of Muscardin, and we have it now currently fermenting in one demi-muid that we've taken the top off of and are punching it down by hand. And it's like, do we know if a grape like Muscardin is going to be good here? No, we have no idea. We suspect that because it's used in the Rhone, it's not going to be unhappy here. But a lot of these discoveries have been things that have been, well, we should try it because it's on the list. And in some cases, it's very similar to what we're used to seeing in France. And in other cases, it can be different. And in many cases, those differences are positive and really good. I don't think anybody would have predicted that Grenache Blanc would have done what it's done here, or Counoise, or Picpoul, or some of these varieties that are relatively trace varieties in Chateauneuf, but have turned out to be certainly capable of more than that here.
Yeah. And what are you thinking of planting next?
I don't know that we have anything new next.
Okay.
There are some vineyard blocks that we have been kind of eyeing for either new clones of things that we already have, or in some cases blocks that we've just lost so many vines over the years to gophers or to diseases, trunk diseases, or just the fact that it's a stressful climate here where the temperature can swing from just above freezing at night to 90 plus Fahrenheit during the day. It doesn't rain for 6 months of the year. We've only got a foot or two of topsoil. I mean, it's a hard environment for grapevines. So you lose a percent or two every year. And once you get down to half of your grapevines missing, it's time to pull that out and replant. So there's a few things that we've been eyeing like that. I know we want to get more beyond just kind of our initial like half-acre test plantings of things like Clairette Blanche and Vaccarez that have both turned out to be really interesting and delicious. We know we just got our first Cinsault harvest in 2019, and I want to have enough of that we can use it not just in our reds as a part of our blends, but also have some to bottle on its own, also have some for our rosé program where I think it's going to be beautiful. And then we've realized that we probably have not planted enough Mourvedre and Roussanne, which are our two main drivers, to keep up with our plantings of other things. So we've planted 8 acres of Mourvedre this year and 6 acres of Roussanne, which is that's a significant chunk given that we were only at like 115 acres total to start with.
Oh, it's fantastic. Although I was going to say, I think you're the kind of winemaker that makes some of the MW students just cry.
on 2 levels,
the
I think.
idea of trying to blind taste classic Grenache Blanc from California, but no, it's wonderful because I think it's the right thing to be experimenting.
Right.
Colder.
Yeah, there's two things. In the last decade, there have been 2 areas where I've had people studying for Master of Wine or for Master Sommelier come to me and basically say, yeah, thanks for nothing. One is the introduction of these new varieties and bottling things that people in many cases would never in Europe find on their own, let alone in California. But also in the push that we were a part of to get Paso Robles subdivided into 11 sub-AVAs that help people make sense of some of the geographical diversity that's here. But the response I got from a lot of sommeliers was, oh, seriously? One more thing to memorize? Like, thanks a lot.
Yeah. So I hear them. I'm glad I'm through. Honestly, every year it gets more difficult. I think it's not standing still.
World of Wine is getting more diverse and bigger and more accessible, I think, every year.
But I think also the quality is getting better. There's never been a better time to explore globally the world of of wine at the moment. I think
Yeah.
there are, every region is sort of really powering through, and there are exciting things happening. I'm planning a trip to Italy for the first trip in 2 years, and it's amazing to think of the things that have changed even in just 2 years of pretty much life on pause over here. So but it's still the wine industry is energetic and changing and dynamic, and yeah, I'm really excited to get back into a vineyard. I'm hoping to be able to book some flights to your side of the world for next year. But yeah, no, it's definitely been a missing travel over the last 18 months.
Yes, I'm sure. Sure, it has
I
on our end
imagine,
too. So,
I was going to say, I imagine you've enjoyed being able to focus on the vines.
I'm not saying I'm sad not to spend nights in hotels. That's not really my favorite thing to do. It's been nice to be home, and
Mm-hmm.
it's been great to have this be kind of a retreat that I could get to. I've never felt like I've been housebound in any way. I've always been able to come and escape to the vineyard, which has been
Yeah,
a real luxury.
yeah.
Um, one last question, or one last kind of quick topic. I know that you're in the middle of in your most recent offer of focusing on kind of a
Mm.
sustainability exploration.
Yeah.
Are there things that you're seeing out there? Is that something which is coming from your customers, or is this something that you feel like you have a responsibility to do as a gatekeeper?
We absolutely have a responsibility to get our ducks in a row around all elements of sustainability, but also corporate, social responsibility.
Yeah.
And I think the Wine Society is taking a very strong kind of platform and program forward to enact over the next few years, and has, generally speaking, always behaved in a reasonably responsible way. But there's always things that we're discovering that we could be doing more about and more proactively. And I think at the moment we're sort of moments away from being able to announce a new, very comprehensive CSR strategy. So that's all sort of in the pipeline. But it's definitely something that I think all consumers or at least all members of the Wine Society care about. So I don't think nobody's necessarily demanding it and wanting a sort of stamp on every bottle of wine that says something along those lines. But I think they take it on trust that because we have quite a large buying team, because we're working directly with winemakers, we visit everybody that we work with. We travel, we see everything, we try and make sure that we triage it. So there's an expectation that we will only work with people that have a like-minded kind of philosophy. And we need to sort of try and keep that level high, because there's an implicit trust when people are buying a luxury good, that they don't want it to actively be knowingly damaging the environment, or treating people badly, or any of that. So we need to try and maintain a very high standard there. And I think that customers, of course, see it as a standard. I don't think it's necessarily a call to buy, but it is a standard by which they hope we'll stick to.
That's beautifully put. Excellent. I agree with all of that 100%. So, thank you.
Yeah, no. Well, you were pretty much one of our poster child for one of the articles. So everything that you're doing is something that we're very keen to explain the level to which someone like you go in the quest to tread lightly, and to be positive, and to be a net gain at the end. And so we're very keen to really explain all of the lengths that you go to our membership, so that they know that that's something that we all care about. Good.
Wonderful. Okay,
Yeah.
well, I cannot believe that it has been a half an hour, but it has been a half an hour. Want to be sensitive to your time. So if people want to learn more about the Wine Society, or to follow you in your own travels and pursuits, what's the best way for people to do that?
So Instagram is great, but the Wine Society is both active on Instagram as the Wine Society, or the Wine Society in 1874, which is when we started. I'm there as Sarah the Wine Buyer. And all of my buying colleagues are also on the same sort of metric for the handle. So Matthew the Wine Buyer. So there are lots of us to follow, but we also have a great website that has huge amounts of information, which is thewinesociety.com. And that's where all of our kind of main pieces and offers and articles are stored.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you for joining me. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, everyone who chose to take a piece of their Wednesday to listen to this conversation. And I will see you all in 2 weeks, by which point we will be done with harvest and hopefully celebrating our first decent rainfall, which would be the best fall season gift that we could get. Cool.
Well, I hope harvest goes brilliantly, Jason. Best of luck.
Thank you, Sarah.
See you.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.